Thank you very much, everyone, for being present in this important announcement today. What's taking place is today with the news of the resignation of former Minister Randy Boissonnault. It was welcome news for Indigenous people right across the country who know the real consequences of pretendingism across the country. This takes real support and money out of the hands of Indigenous people. When we abuse systems that were meant for Indigenous people to succeed and overcome barriers, and you abuse that system, it's wrong. And it needs to stop. I was very pleased today, and I'm certain Indigenous people right across this country welcome the news of the resignation of one of the most prolific pretendians in the House of Commons, and it's time that we address this issue moving forward. It's true that the Liberals have let people down. They've let Indigenous people down in particular. When we look to this place, the House of Commons, for leadership, when we're looking to our fellow leaders for leadership, it pains people to know that they've been lied to, that they've been let down, and in many cases the people at Edmonton Centre are embarrassed. This isn't the conduct that our country deserves. Canadians deserve so much more. We have one of the greatest opportunities in the planet to create something really special here in North America. We can honor the treaties, we can honor reconciliation, we can honor First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, but it takes real action and it takes real concrete steps that when Indigenous people are abused or the programs that are meant for them are abused, that we have the strength as a country to end it. Without the actions taken today, this issue of pretendians continuing to benefit off of Indigenous people will only get worse. This is a clear signal to pretendians across the country. If you pretend to be Indigenous for the purpose of accessing Indigenous benefits, funding, or prestige, you will be found out. We will find you. We will ensure that your reputation and the benefits you've received from pretending to be Indigenous are removed. It's unfair for so many Indigenous people that have done everything right. It's time that Indigenous people get more justice. This is the time to do it. Thank you so much. I'm happy to take questions.
Mr. Desjarlais, does this make it easier for your party to support the government on other votes, or does it make it harder because of how egregious you think this breach is?
We're going to go vote by vote no matter what happens. The business of Parliament, when things are tabled there, are going to be programs that a lot of people fought for and programs that New Democrats fought for. Should those come to a vote at the House of Commons, we're going to review that legislation, we're going to review those principles, we're going to review that budget, and make a decision based on that, the merit of the actual thing table. We won't make any decision based on what's in front of us simply because the Liberals have problems keeping high standard of ethics in their own party.
So you have no problem, though, supporting the Liberals on future votes?
I have to see those votes first before I know whether I would support them or not. We have to know what the language is in order to vote yes or no.
If you like the policy,
if the
you
policy,
don't dislike the Liberals enough to vote against it.
I dislike the Liberals enough to vote against bad policy.
Right.
But I like a government that produces good policy. I don't know whether or not that government will be, I don't know if that will be this government when we see their budget. That's something we're going to have to review when we see it, but it's going to have to be a vote by vote.
What about the false statement?
Well, we have to see it. Like, I haven't seen it, you haven't seen it, no one has seen it yet. Oh yes, but I do believe that what's happened today is incredibly important. The fact that we got justice for Indigenous people on a very serious issue that's been, Indigenous people have been silently suffering this for a long time and have been difficult for us to find a way to call this kind of behavior out. And it's a good day for Indigenous people to know that Canadians, Indigenous people, and politicians take this issue seriously, and when and where pretendians exist, we will find them and we'll get justice for Indigenous people.
You told Power Play yesterday that you were hearing other stories from your constituents or people in Edmonton about Randy Boissonnault using his Indigenous heritage. Can you tell us a bit more about what you've been hearing?
See, this is something that predates me even. I'm a new member of Parliament, and there's so much that has gone down before my time as an MP, and we've heard stories for a long time within the community, particularly by Indigenous community members who've heard him say, whether it's behind closed doors or in private gatherings, that he is someone he isn't. They've taken that, of course, and when Indigenous people hear this, they ask, well, you said your creed, so is that true? Where are you from? And that's how Indigenous people operate. We love to connect with one another. We want to figure out who we are, but found barriers when trying to ask them those questions. Many people in Edmonton have tried to ask this question. It's taken only until today, or the last few weeks, to finally get answers related to who he truly is, and we still don't know.
Just to be clear, like, behind closed doors, he was also saying he was of Cree heritage? Is that what you
That's what I hear from constituents in my community across Edmonton. This is, of course, predating me. This is a long time of race shifting we're here. It wasn't just the last few months. It wasn't only when he applied for his grant. It was over a decade where he's been misrepresenting the truth. And I think some reporters have suggested that and found more credible information related to that claim. But it's something I hear from Indigenous people on the ground. I'm so happy.
Stories? Did you hear to Catherine's point, did you hear there are more allegations or just the same story over and over?
No, this is the thing. This is the problem. I think it's a scary thing. Is there's been multiple claims of multiple different identities.
Can you explain what they are, though? What are you referring
The two that were outlined in the media were the ones I've heard, which is Cree, a non-status adoptive Métis, which these, by the way, aren't legitimate ways to identify as a Métis person. By the way, there's no such thing as Métis status.
There's more claims than those two.
I'm not certain, but those are the claims I've heard, and there's multiple versions of those claims, of those two claims. Yeah.
Would you be okay if he stays on as MP? Like, does the news of him resigning go as far as you'd want it to?
I think what's important right now in talking about Mr. Boissonnault as a member of Parliament is understanding that we don't have all the facts. That's the part of the issue here. The the Edmonton Police, as we're aware, are investigating his business dealings. Randy's the only one who knows the full truth here. He has to measure and reflect on his own conduct and to answer that question of whether or not he has the integrity to stand as the Member of Parliament for Edmonton Centre. He will have to speak to his constituents and discover whether or not he is fit and able to represent that riding. That's something that people of Edmonton Centre have to decide, and that's something that Randy has to reflect on.
So will you
based on what you're saying, that you don't know all the facts, why is it that you were calling for him to resign from the cabinet?
Oh, because that's a way bigger level of responsibility. To be a minister in this country, to be a cabinet minister, means to have your direct opinion and power over or influence over the levers of power. To be a backbench MP in the Liberal Party, you never hear of them. You'll never even know they exist, and that's what he's about to become. But in that time, he should reflect deeply as to what is true. The fact that he has perceptions of conflict of interest is simply enough to remove a minister. The fact that he's being investigated multiple times is something now that he has to reflect on, and he has to decide whether or not he should stand as the Member of Parliament for Edmonton Centre.
What was the tipping point for you then to call for his resignation?
The tipping point came when we had revelations of serious criminal misconduct. We know that the Edmonton police in my city are currently investigating his former business dealings. This is something I hadn't known last week. That is incredibly concerning to me, that the top police officials in my city are investigating criminal instances of businesses he is directly part of. That alone merits a minister resigning. He then must now cooperate fully with all police services in direct relation to his business dealings.
Do you believe the House should still investigate him? Like, do you believe the committee should still be investigating this? What steps do you want us to take in the House process?
I need to see this case fully investigated. We need to have transparency for Canadians. This is a public place we're in right now.
What do you want to
Committee.
Which committee do you want to see, and what witnesses do you want to see?
In terms of the committees, I think there's multiple committees that have a mandate to do this work. Ethics Committee is a really important place for in particular. This is where we deal with some of the biggest scandals in the countries in ethics, because we have some of the most important frameworks around ethics in that committee. It should also be investigated in Indigenous Northern Affairs Canada. The INAN Committee. Not Indigenous, a former ministry. The INAN Committee needs to investigate this. That's the committee responsible for Indigenous peoples, and Indigenous people need to understand how this was able to go down. There's two issues here: pretendianism, which is something we haven't investigated in the House of Commons before. We need to investigate. We need to bring in expert witnesses, chiefs, Métis leaders, community members that speak to the violence that they've faced because of pretendians, so they can get a framework to address it. On the other end of things, we need to find a way to clamp down on the real criminal aspects of this, which is something we leave to the RCMP, we leave to the police, because those are serious allegations of a potential issue of a minister doing business at the same time that he was sitting in cabinet. Thank you very much.